好，那能不能简单的自我介绍一下吗？让我们的听众们知道你是谁，你做什么工作，叫什么名字等等。
好，大家好，我是 Lewys，我中文名字是小鹿，我来自威尔士，不过现在住在剑桥，在英格兰。我现在的工作是会计，不过我以前是老师，威尔士语的老师。
嗯，你什么时候开始学中文呢？
这个问题不是两三句就能说清楚的，因为我在大学的时候见到我太太，她是中国人，所以那时候我学了几个简单的词，比如你好、谢谢等等，不过没有上心，就是自学，每天用这个 Duolingo 在 Duolingo 上学，大概10分钟。不过然后我发现这个方法对我没有效，所以就是很快放弃，很快放弃
OK，
了。去年6月，开始认真的学中文，因为那时候我找到你的网站，开始用你的学习方法。
所以你就是几个月之前就开始认真的学习中文，然后我还记得我第一次见到你的时候，就是你第一次跟我上了第一次课的时候，我第一个反应就是想，你的中文还可以，但是你的发音、你的声调、你的口语还是有一定的进步空间，然后有时候我听得有点费劲。然后我还记得你跟我说，你跟你的岳母沟通的时候，他也听不懂，听不太懂你在说什么，是吗？
我觉得那时候我的中文阅读能力和我的听力还可以，因为
嗯
我已经习惯了听我太太说中文。比如
嗯
我们在中国的时候，她跟她的家人交流的时候，呃，我觉得那个简单的话题我听得懂，
嗯
不过我开口的时候他们都听不懂，就是
啊，
然后我发现我有这个声调的问题。
但是你没有放弃，
对啊，就是因为去年，我拿到我的会计证书，所以那时候我在找一个新的挑战，所以决定又开始学中文。
嗯
那时候我找到你的网站，用你的学习方法，因为通过用你的方法，感觉我的中文有进步，所以那时候我有更多的动力。所以那时
嗯，
候决定继续学中文，所以谢谢你，谢谢你的方
哦，
法，我在现在
不用谢，
在
不
学中文。
用谢。然后这几个月，我觉得大家都能听到你的中文这几个月有很大的进步，对吧？所以你能不能跟大家分享一下，你这几个月你使用了什么方法来提高你的中文水平呢？尤其是你的口语。
我用影子跟读，就是我们在英语来说，shadowing 这
嗯
个方法就是你们跟着录音同时说，不过凭我的经验，最好的学习方法就是听自己的录音，这
嗯
样可以听出自己的错误，比如你的声调和发音的错误。不过我刚开始用这个方法的时候，感觉，可能很难听出自己的错误。因为
对，
作为外国人，我们的耳朵不够敏感，
对对，是的。
所以我建议大家都找一个教练，最好就是外国人的教练，因为他们知道你们在呃面对什么挑战。
我听过很多人，他们都说最好的老师就都是中国人，来自中国的中文老师。
嗯嗯嗯。
但是你的建议是相反的。
是的，是相反的。不过这就是我的个人的怎么说个人看法，不一定是对的。就是凭我的经验，比如说我在有中国的老师的时候，他们都说你的中文很棒。
不管你的中文有多差，他们都说你的
是的，不
中文
过那
很好。
我在中国的时候，我开口的时候，大家都听不懂，所以
嗯，
那时候我一定知道我有很大的问题，我
但是
不。
中文老师还会坚持说你的中文很好。
是的，我可以了
还会
解他们。
坚持骗你说你的中文很好。
是的，我觉得他们真的骗我，不是。不过这就是他们不想让我失去我的自信。呃，
哦，
是的，所以我可以了解他
对，不
们为什
想让你
么这样。
失望。
那时候我觉得这个情况很尴尬，因为我觉得我的中文那么好，大
嗯。
家都说我的中文很好。不过去中国的时候，跟中国人说话的时候，他们都听不懂。
对，我也经历过这件事情，所以
是的，我
我
在
能理
YouTube
解你的。
上看你的视频，对，所以
对，
看这个视频，看你的经验的时候，我觉得啊，我们有一样的问题。
因为我一直以为我的声调很好，然后我的声调很差的时候，我周围的朋友，包括我的老师在内，他们都说你的中文，包括你的声调都挺好的。虽然我能听出你不是中国人，但是这个没关系。你现在的中文比以前好多了，这个让我非常的，作为一个教练，
嗯，
我非常我非常开心听到你现在的中文有多好。
嗯
呃，
你现在我跟我的中国家人说话的时候，真的没有问题，呃，无障碍沟通。
可以无障碍沟通。
是的。
好的，那非常感谢你，Lewis 接受我的采访，然后我希望我们今天讲的一些话对大家是有一定的帮助的。好，Lewis, so welcome back. So I thought I'd catch up with you a day after we just recorded our podcast in Chinese to kind of reflect on your journey that you've been on over the last 6 months that we've been working together on the coaching program. So first of all, I just want to say like congratulations because the transformation that you've kind of been through over the last 6 months is really inspirational. I've kind of seen you the whole way through. I saw you like what your level was at the beginning, what you were able to do and what you weren't able to do versus now. But I wanted to kind of get you on to talk a bit more about that to everybody else because
Yeah.
people will have heard kind of the recordings before and after and a bit of your explanation in Chinese there about that kind of process and how you did it. Take us back then to when it all started.
Yeah, I've been learning Chinese on and off since university, to be honest with you. So I met my wife in university, thought like, oh, I'll just download Duolingo, right? This is going to be easy, like most delusional thing
Right.
that I ever did. And then kind of, on and off learning. And then my mother-in-law was coming over for a period of 6 months. So I thought, okay, I'll give this a real go now while she's coming over. Even sat HSK1, sat HSK2, thinking that would help as well. And had a online tutor, had a few apps like Do Chinese, like I was talking about, and man, like just couldn't hold the conversation. And even when I was saying things, just having like a blank expression. And
Mm.
then I turned to my wife and I would say like exactly the same things I've just said, and she would say to my mother-in-law, her mother, and I'd be like that's just what I've said, but you're repeating what I've said. Why can't you understand? Like I just
Right, right.
like, but it was because of the tones, right? But like I just had no clue, and nobody ever really sat me down and said, if you do not get your tones right, you won't be understood.
Yeah,
Uh,
so up until that point then, so you had been learning for on and off, doing this Duolingo and other stuff like that for
yeah,
a couple of years, and you'd been working at it really hard because you have a bit of an obsessive personality, right? So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
when you've got one thing that you're working on, you work at it really hard. Leading up to this, you knew this was going to be the first time that you met your mother-in-law and you wanted to make a good
Yeah,
impression,
no, I'd met her before, but it's just throwing back, you've got this big gap in the middle, which is COVID, right?
right?
And so before that, I was at university when we met. So I'd never really dedicated the time to like trying to learn Chinese. It
Right.
was very much a casual thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I never really got that like big gut punch of disappointment before. But then I went through this intensive period of learning before she came over to the UK. I'd say probably, yeah, I'd say a pretty intensive period of about 3 to 6 months, even sitting 2 HSK exams during that time as well. And I put a lot of money into it as well, if I'm honest with you. Like tuition,
Yeah.
it's not cheap, especially when it doesn't work, right? So put all this time and energy, went to the airport, started speaking to her in the airport, and just having this like, because my wife didn't come with me to the airport to pick it up.
Oh, you went alone to pick.
I went alone, yeah, and I was thinking, I'll be fine, like, because I learned a few phrases, and then I'd greet her, and I'd be like, just completely atonally talking to her and just having this blank expression. I was like, mate, in one instant like that, just like all of that time, all of that energy, all of those hours, all of that money just went like in my mind, just flushed it down the drain. It was gone.
So how long was there between that experience and when you kind of joined the program?
Yeah, so it was about 6 months after that she went back, because to be honest with you, it was something that I'd just given up on. I just thought I was just hopeless. Kind of. I read a lot online about this, tone issue, because that's
Right.
when it came to the forefront. Because I'd been told that, oh, don't worry, we can still understand you, but actually, I think a lot of Chinese people, especially in the UK, they get used to hearing foreigners speak Chinese, so they get used to this atonal language, and what happens then is when you actually meet someone who's not been exposed to that,
Mhm.
they've just got no clue what you're saying,
Right.
right?
Right.
So yeah, I think it was about 6 months after she left, because I was online and I saw that actually this whole idea that once you have bad tones, you can't get rid of the bad tones. You either do your tones at the start of your language learning journey, or forget it. And then I saw a lot of your content then, and yeah, like, no offense, like, heard like how terrible you sounded before, right? And then like I was like, oh, that's me, like that's like literally me. And then your progress. So I thought, right, I've got to do exactly what this guy did.
So you heard those early recordings and then kind of the transformation that I documented on my blog, and then thought you might want to do the same thing yourself. So I guess when you first started then, so what kind of level, how would you describe your level 6 months ago when we
Mm.
first started doing coaching?
Yeah, actually, my reading and my listening, I didn't feel were too bad, to be
Mm.
honest with you, because I'd used dual Zhongwen, like this one, dual Chinese,
Yeah,
and I'd used a few other apps, and I was kind of used to hearing my wife speak when we were in China, and also on the phone, and like I
right,
comprehended a lot of the simple stuff. It's
right.
just when I opened my mouth to speak, just like people would look at me as if I was like an eight, like I may as well have just been speaking Welsh to
Yeah.
them. Like it was that bad. So
And tones was one problem, and also sentence structure, but those two are kind of related because if you're not used to mimicking the language in whole sentences, collecting whole sentences through sentence mining and mimicking them with accurate tones,
exactly.
then kind of both issues are going to come up, aren't they? Like, so
Yeah.
did you find both were an issue?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I was using like overly formal language a lot.
Right.
That's just one example. So you had this mix of bad tones, poor pronunciation, poor sentence structure, and wrong choice of words. And I
Mm.
think sometimes if you're missing elements of it, or you get maybe, I don't know, one or two tones wrong in a a whole paragraph of what you're saying, you'll still be comprehended. But I just had this overwhelming avalanche of problems that I really couldn't see a way out of. If I'm honest with you, I was like, I've just ruined it. There's
Right.
just no way I can get out of this.
The thing that we started with was tones, wasn't it? Because we were kind of
Yes.
back to the drawing board
Yeah.
to make sure that you were able to get them right in isolation and in pairs.
Mm.
I think you mostly were able to get them okay in pairs with a few exceptions, mostly involving third tone, right?
Mm-mm. Yeah. And just the degree of rise in the second tone, I think, was a problem as well, wasn't it? From what I
Yeah,
remember.
there were a few niggling issues there. So I think there was a period that we had to spend like over the first month or
Yeah.
two, where it was mainly going back to the drawing board in terms of the basic, the fundamentals. And that for someone who's worked quite hard and maybe already got to a decent level of reading and listening, was that like, did you find that a bit people find that a bit frustrating sometimes?
Yeah, I mean, it's like you look at it as taking a step back, right? Because you delude yourself into thinking, "Wow, I can comprehend all of this, all of this, so I should be able to speak about all of this." And what you need to disassociate is like comprehension doesn't equal output, right? Like
Right.
unless you're really practicing output in a controlled manner with feedback, you
Two are kind of
don't be
misaligned.
surprised when
Yeah.
nobody can understand you.
Right, exactly. So from there, you started stepping up, kind of working with whole sentences and blocks of language, collecting whole sentences through sentence mining. We also stepped up your input, but
Yeah.
at this point, we tried to kind of align your input with the output. So making sure that every time you're watching stuff, you're not just watching it completely passively, but
Yes.
collecting sentences from that. So you want to talk a bit more about that side of things, like when you started focusing more on the whole sentences.
Yeah, that was kind of a really transformational moment, to be honest with you, because what I was able to do is take natural sentences, take the audio through sentence mining, through the methodologies you speak about on your website as well, and actually then extract phrases that I could use every day. And then what I realized is because I could use the echo method to really get those sentences nailed down, people were comprehending what I was saying. And that to me, then I was like, whoa, like the reaction now isn't like, oh, ha, ha, and like walking away.
Right.
It was very much like, oh, wow, that's really good. And as time went on, I actually kind of against what I thought would happen. People stopped saying, oh, wow, your Chinese is really good. And they actually just treated me more like a Chinese speaker. Does that make sense?
Right.
And that's when I started to feel really good about it. That was like, wow, like I'm actually having a conversation now. The conversation isn't about, oh, wow, you speak Chinese. Like it's just like a normal conversation. And I was like, that really started after getting the tones right, then getting through sentence mining, using the echo method then to nail those sentences, and then went from there really.
So about 5 months into the program, after doing all these things quite on a regular basis and receiving a lot of feedback,
Yeah.
you then had the opportunity to go to China. This was a couple of months ago now.
Yeah.
Over the Christmas period, right?
Yes, it was. Yeah.
And you had another chance to meet your family there.
Yeah.
And this had kind of been your goal from the start, right?
Yeah.
That we set that you had this trip coming up in about 5 months' time.
Yeah.
And that you wanted to get ready for that so that you would be able to communicate clearly.
Yeah.
So talk me through what that experience was like then on that trip.
Yeah, I don't use it lightly. I've said it before, and genuinely like a life-changing experience, because I'd had all of this stored knowledge in Chinese that I just accepted, oh, that's just wasted, right? And then through the program, I managed to unlock that, and not only unlock that, actually use it then with my family in China, and just completely transform my relationship with my in-laws and with my wife's wider family. So having conversations, talking about the food, talking about life in the UK, talking about cultural differences. And then you're actually a participant. You're not a spectator. Right. Before I'd go over to China, I'd be sat there and I would, in this tone, be like, oh, jugga hun hao che. Like that would be it, I wouldn't, and people would be like, oh, well done. And actually go into having, full conversations with people. So yeah, it was a really amazing experience, and something now I've got the bug to want to go back and prove again, right? So,
yeah.
Doing
and fewer blank stares.
Oh, like if I was going to say like I was 100% comprehended on everything I was saying, I'd be lying, right? But I'd say 98% of the time, and 100% of the time if I knew the subject that we were talking about, because this is another thing that you taught me, was this idea of microfluency. So if we were talking about the subjects that I had mined and I had studied, 100% of the time there'd be no issue. If it ventured out and then to something else, like if someone wanted to, it didn't happen, just for an example, talk about astrology, then I'm going to struggle, aren't I? So
yeah. You're a particularly ambitious learner, right? So a lot of people, having got to the stage that you've got to, where you're able to talk about topics that you're interested in with good tones, good sentence structure, and communicate effectively with native speakers and have enjoyable conversations with native speakers, a lot of people would kind of maybe stop at that point or be satisfied, but you're a bit more ambitious than that. And so you have plans over the next 6 months. In 6 months' time, you're going to be joining our Mandarin retreat, which is a 2-week immersive event where we'll be speaking nothing but Chinese for 2 weeks. What are your goals then within the next 6 months? Where do you see room for improvement in your spoken Chinese now, and what where do you want to be in 6 months?
I think to answer where I want to be fluent, right? Like completely on across a wide array of topics. And people would hear in the video that we recorded, there's still some lingering issues. I'd say these issues now aren't issues that will stop you from being comprehended. Right. But then there's a polishing phase, right? I would say maybe there's a fixing phase, and now I'm onto the polishing phase. Maybe getting the intonations more natural and the flow sentences more natural. And maybe expand the vocabulary a bit as well. But I think like learning Chinese, once you open the door, it's hard to close it, because it's such an interesting language. It has so many cultural nuances. It has so many, just a vast array of content online as well that you want to understand. And I think, I'd really love one day to be able to, comfortably live each day in Chinese and not have this cognitive thought of, okay, like I'm going to speak Chinese now, and like I have in Welsh, I'll switch between Welsh and English in 3 seconds. There's no problem at all. But coming to Chinese, it's not
Yeah,
seamless.
and I think the word that you used there is really appropriate. So, like, what I see you doing now is entering this kind of polishing phase where communication is essentially no longer a big barrier. And now what you want to do is to get more polished, where everything just flows more naturally, and it's less kind of effort to get stuff out with the correct tones, etc., and with a flowing rhythm. And so I think one of the things that will be really interesting is that we're going to continue documenting this process, because one of the things I always say is that when you watch people speak really good Chinese online, you usually only see the final phase, the end result. And what we're trying to do here is show the process, so document the process. That's why we kind of decided to do this at 6 months, and then in 6 months' time we'll do it again after the retreat. We'll do another interview, and we'll be posting it online on the podcast and on the website. So really well done for what you've done already, and look forward to kind of continuing working with you, and then seeing the results in 6 months' time.
Definitely. I mean, the one last thing I would say is that, I have a full-time job. I have a 4-year-old child, so I've done this on a very limited time kind of budget as well. So the methods absolutely do work that have been taught, but also I'd say that the feedback's been invaluable. Just the ability to have detailed feedback on exactly what issues there are and exactly how to fix them from someone who has had the same problem themselves is really valuable. Because I had some feedback before in some online lessons, when I first started, okay, I want to really focus on tones now, and the feedback was like, okay, that tone's wrong. The inability to actually explain how to fix that. So I think that's something that was really different to my experience in this program than I had before, was, okay, this is the exact issue and this is exactly how you fixed it. And by the way, I had that issue before as well. So yeah, invaluable. And I'd really encourage people to give it a go. And I can guarantee you there's no better program out there. I've tried them all.